Welcome to Created Healthy. I'm Dawn Combs. It's a common idea that God gave us everything we need in nature, but do we believe it enough to walk that out in truth? Often the very same people who say this go looking for answers on how to use food and medicine from man-made sources. Everything man creates comes with a user's manual. Why would God be any different? I challenge you to join me in seeking revelation about our body, mind, soul, and spirit health by digging into His written word and in practicing pure science in the visible world of His creation. I want to continue the story of the Shunamite woman today, but first I need to make a correction. I referred to Elisha's widow and her son incorrectly yesterday, and I want to correct that. By the time of the reading today, it is presumed that she is a widow because her husband is not mentioned. But at the time of yesterday's reading in 2 Kings 5, I believe, we did 4 through 7. So yesterday's reading talked about her, 4, 2 Kings 4. And she is referred to in all the biblical research as the Shunamite woman. She is not named anywhere. And at the time of our first encounter with her, she's not a widow, but she's pretty progressive. She's pretty ahead of her time in that we see her as a very strong-willed person. She is speaking and making decisions without her husband, who is present. But we understand her to be very wealthy, very influential, and it's important to know more about her in looking at, we're in 2 Kings 8 through 11 today, and we encounter her again in 2 Kings 8. And she would be a pretty important woman in society. And Elisha has come to her a number of times, and she actually, the history here is that she had gone to her husband very early on, recognizing that Elisha is important and valuing him as a prophet of the one true God. And out of that faithfulness, she commissions that they build an upper room in their home so that Elisha has a place to stay every time that he comes through. So she is anticipating his needs. She wants to host him whenever he's around. She wants to take care of him. She's doing her bit. We start to get a picture of this woman's character. And here in 2 Kings 8, Elisha has come through, and it appears that now she has the son that he prophesied that she was going to have, that she didn't believe she was going to have. He raised that child from the dead, and now he's coming through, and he's telling this woman, hey, there's going to be a famine. It's going to be really bad, and it's going to be best for you to go live with the Philistines. So, again, I'm putting myself in real time and this woman's actual circumstances. She's well off. She is endowed with a home and lands, and this prophet is coming through and telling her she needs to leave and go live in exile. So the things that she's giving up is position in society, and she's abandoning land and home and wealth, and she just does it. She just accepts it, and she gathers up her household, and they go and they live in Philistine, amongst the Philistines, and they do this for 7 years, and at the end of 7 years she comes back. And here is the crux of what I want to look at today. She comes back and finds that her lands have sort of been forfeit, that other people have taken over. She's lost her wealth, she's lost her lands and her home, and she heads towards where the king is living to talk to him and to beg for her lands and her property to be returned to her. So here I'm going to go back a few chapters too, and this king is Jehoram, king of Israel. And we know from earlier chapters in 2 Kings that it was stated that he did evil in the sight of the Lord. He was better than other kings, those that came before him, but it said that he still was leading Israel in the path of sin. He tore down one of the Baal shrines. Maybe he wasn't as worshipful, and maybe what we're seeing there is some of the ambiguity of where he's standing. He may not have been actually totally against God, and he may not have been entirely against the pagan worship. And so I think that's really important for this moment. So we know that he did what God would consider evil. We know that he's not a God-fearing king. And at the moment that the Shunamite woman comes to the palace, it so happens that Elisha's servant, Gehazi, is there, and the king is sort of grilling him about Elisha and what his power is, and is he really a true prophet? Are the things that he says true? And coincidence? My husband and I, as I've mentioned before, we don't believe in coincidences. Here she is back from 7 years exile, and she walks into the palace, and Gehazi is being grilled about Elisha, and he just so happens to be telling the story about Elisha's bringing this child back from the dead. And here's the Shunamite woman who this actually happened to standing in front of them. So the king asks her, did this really happen? Tell me, is he lying to me? Is that what's going on? And I think it's so just sort of offhandedly mentioned, and then we move on with our reading, that she affirms what Gehazi is saying and says, yep, that definitely happened. Here's what I saw. Here's what happened in my home. And here's my son, and he's alive, and he was definitely dead. And, she testifies as to this miracle that she experienced. And it doesn't really seem like a big deal, but I think if we go back again into her status, into her position in society, and we also know she would have known absolutely what kind of king this was. For her to unabashedly support the story that Gehazi is telling about Elisha, it's a gamble. In human terms, it's a gamble. She's there trying to get her wealth back. She's trying to get her position in society back. She would be in the upper levels and perhaps interacting with the king on a more regular basis than somebody who would be a common laborer. So she knows him. And if she stopped to calculate here, would it have been better? Would it have been a more sure thing for her to have said, oh my gosh, no, that totally didn't happen. He was just sick, and Elisha, gave him some cough medicine, and he was fine. He didn't raise him from the dead. I don't think Elisha is very great. In order to get her position and her lands back, could that have been the smarter political thing for her to do? I wonder. She does affirm Elisha's position with God and his authority, and she affirms the miracle. She uses her life to testify in front of this king. And I think about this being a moment where, if the king is conflicted, why is Gehazi there in the first place? Why is the king asking about Elisha? In some instances with Elijah in the past, we have kings that are actively chasing after prophets and killing them. And Elijah was on the run, and that's where he was being fed by ravens and then the widow woman. And Elisha has had trouble. So it's interesting here that Elisha has sent his servant. Elisha was through with this king as of the time of a battle with the Moabites, He was there when Jehoram went to battle and brought a lot of the other kings from the area, and Elisha prophesied that they would overcome, but that they needed to dig trenches to bring water in. Really cool story. They dug trenches into the valley, and when the Moabite force came up over the hill, the way that the rising sun glinted across all this water that was deep in the valley, the Moabite forces thought it was blood, and they thought that all the kings had come together and killed one another because they didn't get along, and they didn't take time to think it through, and they ran down into the valley thinking their victory was assured, and they got wiped out by Jehoram and the other kings. So Elisha has already kind of said, I've prophesied, you've seen it, like, my authority, and you know the power of God, you have witnessed your own miracle, and here you are questioning again. So my sense is that Gehazi is here because Elisha knows that, maybe it's worth a shot to try to talk some sense or to help him convert and see the truth of God. But he's not there in person. He has already washed his hands of this king. But Gehazi, this is a moment where he's being given an opportunity again. Will the Shunamite woman use her life to testify to this king, use her influence, go against what is safe, expedient for what she wants to do, and witness to the power of God? And then perhaps this is a way to influence this king to turn from his evil ways and to return back to God. We're not told that that's what happened, but he was impressed by the Shunamite's story, and he seemed to be impressed enough, and maybe this other witness that he had actually been through was enough to see that this woman was caught up in bigger things, and he was impressed enough to give her petition. He granted her lands and her position. But I think about this in terms of us, of course. I have used my witness to what I went through in infertility over the years, and I believe strongly that I was given the ability to walk through that, and I was blessed in being able to heal my body with God's help so that I could share it. And at times that has gotten me into trouble, but we never know the trials that we go through. We don't know. It obviously blesses us. The Shunamite woman gets blessed in many, many ways here, and the way that she goes through her trials matters, but we never know who the witness of the way that we went through that trial and the blessing that we received. We don't know what the witnessing of that in a public sphere, how that is going to be used by God for other people. And I think that is so important. It's so important that we walk through the trials that we are blessed to be allowed to walk through, and do it in a way that honors God, and then share it and not be afraid to share it, to have the courage to share it, regardless of what the consequences are. I think the Shunamite woman here is a really cool story to testify to that, something that I definitely would have overlooked before. But I feel an affinity with her. I think she's pretty cool. I pray that God is blessing you today and helping you to remember those times that you have lived through a witness or lived through a miracle, and maybe you take it for granted. Maybe you forget it. So many times in the Bible we see that people forget, or they explain it away with their gray matter. That didn't really happen. I'm imagining things. I'm blowing it out of proportion. When we do that, we are diminishing God and the work that He has done. It's better that we witness it. Be that be that witness. Go out. You don't know who you might affect. And may God bless you by showing you how you can be part of ever more miracles in the process. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with a friend. And I'm always interested in hearing what God is laying on your heart. So drop me a rating or review, or join the conversation on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube at Don Combs Really.